Everyone told me that to become a designer, I had to read these. I had to memorize the rules, study the masters, and learn the right way to do things. I tried, but it just made me feel more inadequate, more like an imposter. It was only when I realized that that premise was wrong that I actually started to learn. In truth, the best books don't give you the answers. They give you better eyes. You know that stack of design books sitting on your shelf? The one that everyone says you have to read? The Design of Everyday Things, Don't Make Me Think, all those typography manuals that make your head spin? Yeah, I bought them all too. And for the longest time, they just sat there making me feel guilty. Like I was somehow failing at being a real designer because I couldn't get through chapter 3 of some dense textbook about grid systems. But here's what nobody tells you. The books that actually taught me how to think like a designer, they weren't design books at all. Hey, I'm Amelia Fenmore, and after years of feeling like I was somehow missing the designer gene, I discovered that learning about design isn't about memorizing rules from textbooks. It's about something completely different. Let me tell you what changed everything for me, because I spent way too long doing this the wrong way. We're taught to think of design as adding something, adding furniture, adding a logo, adding a solution. That's a mistake. True design starts with subtraction, by quieting your own mind and learning to listen to the story that's already there. The goal isn't to learn design. It's to learn how to perceive. The books I'm sharing today are not rule books. They are perception-altering tools. I remember sitting in my apartment after my divorce, surrounded by half-empty rooms and this overwhelming feeling that I needed to fill them with something, anything, to make them feel less broken. I had this stack of design books that everyone recommended. The canonical text, the must-reads. I'd open them up and there'd be all these rules about proportions and color theory and hierarchy, and I'd think, okay, but how does this help me understand why this room feels so empty? It wasn't until I stopped trying to learn design and started trying to understand spaces that everything clicked. See, we think design is about imposing our vision onto a space, making it look like something we saw on Pinterest, following the rules we learned in the book. But real design? It's about listening. Every room, every object, every space has a story it's trying to tell. Your job isn't to write a new story. It's to help finish the one that's already started. So let's get started. The most important design book I ever read wasn't about design at all. It was this. Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, a book about indigenous wisdom and our relationship with the natural world. You're probably thinking, wait, what does that have to do with interior design? Everything. This book taught me that every object, every space has a history and a future. My job as a designer isn't to impose my will, but to listen to that story and help write the next chapter. It taught me that the first step of any design project isn't research, it's reverence. There is this passage in the book where Kimmerer talks about how indigenous peoples approach gathering materials from nature. They don't just take, they ask. They listen. They understand that everything exists in relationship. And I remember reading that while sitting in my empty living room, looking at this beat-up coffee table I'd gotten from a garage sale. It had all these water rings and scratches, and my first instinct was to sand it down, paint it, make it better. Then I thought about what Kimmerer wrote, about listening first. So I just sat with that table for a while, really looked at it. Those water rings, they were from years of morning coffees, late night conversations, homework sessions. The scratches told stories of moves, of life being lived. This table didn't need to be fixed, it needed to be honored. So instead of painting over its history, I worked with it. I arranged the room to celebrate that lived-in quality. I brought in other pieces that had their own stories, and suddenly instead of an empty room with old furniture, I had a space that felt deeply, authentically mine. That book taught me that design isn't about making things look new or perfect. It's about understanding the conversation between past, present, and future. It's about reciprocity. What are you giving to a space, and what is it giving back to you? When you approach design this way, everything changes. You stop asking, what should I buy? And start asking, what's already here that I'm not seeing? Which brings me to the second book. After I learned to listen, I had to learn how to see. We walk around our own homes, our own neighborhoods, functionally blind. This book was like a manual from my eyes. This book literally teaches you how to notice things. And I know that sounds basic, but when was the last time you really looked at the way light moves through your home throughout the day? Horowitz takes walks with different experts, a geologist, a typographer, a dog, and each one shows her a completely different version of the same street. The geologist sees the story of the earth in the building stones. The typographer sees a history of communication in every sign. The dog sees, well, things we can't even imagine. After reading this, I started doing what I call design walks through my own home. I remember one morning I noticed this patch of light that hit the hallway wall at exactly 9:15 a.m. Just for about 20 minutes, this boring beige wall would turn golden, and it was beautiful, and I lived there for months without seeing it. That observation changed everything about how I designed that hallway. Instead of trying to fix the boring wall with artwork, I painted it a soft white that would capture and amplify that morning light. I moved a chair there and created a little moment. Now it's my favorite spot for morning coffee. This book taught me that the answer to every design problem is already in the room with you, waiting for you to pay attention. You don't need inspiration from Instagram. You don't need to copy someone else's style. You need to develop your own way of seeing. Start noticing the patterns of movement in your home. Where do you naturally drop your keys? Where does clutter accumulate? Where do you find yourself lingering? These observations are designed gold. Notice materials, really notice them. The way the wood grain changes in different lights, the temperature of metal versus fabric, the sound different surfaces make when you touch them. This isn't just observation. It's data gathering for design decisions that will actually work with your life, not just look good in photos. Okay, so I will include one real design book, but not for the reason you think. The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. Most people read this to learn about affordances and signifiers. They read it to learn the rules of usability. I read it as a book on empathy. Yes, empathy. This book isn't about objects. It's about the people who use them. It taught me to stop asking, does this look good? And start asking, how does this make someone feel? Does it make them feel competent, confused, stressed, welcome? Every design choice is a dialogue with a person's emotional state. Norman talks about doors that you can't figure out whether to push or pull. Stovetops where you can never remember which knob controls which burner. These aren't just bad designs. They're failures of empathy. The designer didn't think about the human on the other end. And this completely revolutionized how I approach interior design. I stopped thinking about rooms as compositions to be admired and started thinking about them as experiences to be lived. Take entryways, for example. Most people focus on making them look impressive. A nice console table, a mirror, maybe some art. But after reading Norman, I started asking different questions. What does someone need when they first walk in? Where do their hands naturally want to put things? How can the space itself communicate welcome home without requiring thought? I designed an entryway for a client with 3 kids. Instead of a beautiful console that would just collect clutter, we created individual drop zones at kid height, hooks they could actually reach, a bench at the right height for putting shoes on, a mirror positioned so even the youngest child could check themselves before leaving. Was it the most aesthetically pure solution? No, but every single morning, that entryway made their life easier instead of harder. It reduced stress instead of creating it. That's what Norman taught me. Good design isn't about impressing people. It's about serving them. When you read this book as a designer, don't just learn the terminology, learn the mindset. Every piece of furniture, every layout decision, every color choice is part of an ongoing conversation with the person living in that space. Are you listening to their needs, or are you just talking at them with your design choices? So, the takeaway isn't to go buy these books. The takeaway is to start seeing. Here's your assignment. Don't buy anything. Don't read anything. For the next 24 hours, I want you to choose one object in your home. A simple chair, a worn out coffee mug, a window. I want you to sit with it for 15 minutes. No phone, no distractions, just look at it. Notice its history. Notice how the light hits it. Listen to what it might be telling you. That is the beginning of learning design. I'm serious about this. Set a timer, 15 minutes, one object. Look at how it's aged, the wear patterns that show how it's been used, the way it occupies the space, the shadow it casts, the story it tells you about the person who owns it, you. This is a meditation, although it might feel like it. This is design training. Because once you can fully see one object completely, you can start to see how objects relate to each other, how spaces flow, how life actually happens in a room versus how we think it should happen. One of my students did this exercise with an old wooden spoon. 15 minutes stirring of a spoon. She noticed the way the handle was worn where her grandmother's thumb used to rest. She saw how the wood grain spiraled. She realized it was actually beautiful. That spoon is now displayed in her kitchen, not hidden in a drawer. It became art memory, and function all at once. That's design. In the comments below, don't tell me your favorite design book. Tell me what object you chose and one new thing you noticed about it. Let's start the dialogue here, because here's what I've learned after all these years. Design isn't a subject you study. It's a way of being in a relationship with the world around you. Those canonical design books everyone tells you to read, they're not wrong. They contain valuable information. But if you read them without first developing your ability to see and listen, you're just rules without context, theory without practice, words without meaning. Start with perception. Start with reverence. Start with empathy. The rest is just technique. And technique, you can learn anytime. But learning to truly see, that's the foundation everything else is built on. Your home is already telling you how it wants to be designed. Your life is already showing you what you need. The answers aren't in books or on Pinterest or in someone else's perfect room. They're right there, waiting for you to notice them. So pick your object, set your timer, and prepare to see something you've looked at 1,000 times like you're seeing it for the first time. Because once you learn to see like a designer, you can't unsee it. And that's when you realize maybe you had the designer's eye all along. You just needed permission to trust what you were seeing. I'll see you in the next one, designer friends, and I can't wait to hear what you discover when you really start looking.